there's a specific kind of loneliness that doesn't come from being alone. It shows up in rooms with people. In conversations that sound normal on the surface. In laughter that looks real enough to pass. You're present, participating, nodding at the right moments, and still, something inside you feels untouched. It's not that you don't belong. You're included. You're invited. Sometimes you're even liked. And yet, there's this quiet distance you can't seem to cross. You listen, you respond, you stay engaged, but nothing lands deeply. The words move around you instead of through you. When the moment ends, you feel oddly unchanged, like you were there in body but not fully received. That's when the loneliness hits hardest. Not as pain exactly. More like absence. Like something essential didn't happen, and you don't know how to ask for it without sounding dramatic or needy. So you don't. You go home. You sit with the feeling. You wonder what's wrong with you, because from the outside, everything looks fine. This kind of loneliness doesn't start in adulthood. It forms early, in environments where being present didn't automatically mean being understood. Where emotional closeness required effort, timing, or restraint. Where attention came inconsistently, or only when you were useful, agreeable, or low maintenance. You learned how to be around people without fully opening. How to stay connected without exposing the parts of you that might not be welcomed. So you adapted. You shared selectively. You kept things light. You read the room before revealing anything that felt too raw, too heavy, too personal. You learned how to belong without being fully seen. And it worked. You weren't rejected. You weren't abandoned. You stayed connected. But something subtle happened in the process. Your nervous system learned that proximity didn't guarantee safety. That being close didn't always mean being met. That showing too much could change the tone of the room in ways you couldn't control. So closeness became cautious. And loneliness learned how to hide inside connection. Here's the part that's hardest to explain. You don't feel lonely because you lack people. You feel lonely because you're not fully there when you're with them. There's a split that happens internally. One part of you participates, talks, listens, reacts. Another part stays slightly withdrawn, watching, filtering, deciding what's safe to reveal and what isn't. That split protects you. But it also keeps you from being reached. You can spend hours with others and still feel untouched. You can have conversations that make sense intellectually but leave no emotional trace. You walk away wondering why nothing shifted inside you. It's not that people don't care. It's that the part of you that longs for connection never fully steps forward. So the loneliness remains quiet, persistent, confusing. Over time, this starts to feel like something permanent. You might tell yourself you're just independent. Or private. Or not the kind of person who needs deep connection. You learn to live around the loneliness instead of questioning it. But it shows up in subtle ways. In the way you hesitate before sharing something personal. In the way you downplay your feelings. In the way you feel more like an observer than a participant in your own relationships. Even intimacy can feel distant. Even closeness can feel thin. And because nothing is obviously wrong, the loneliness becomes harder to name. Harder to address. It doesn't scream for attention, it waits. It sits quietly in the background, asking a single question you don't quite know how to answer. Why do I feel alone even when I'm not? The shift begins when you stop treating the loneliness as a flaw. Because this loneliness isn't a sign that you're broken or incapable of connection. It's a sign that you learned how to survive without it. Your system learned how to stay connected without relying on emotional reciprocity. How to be present without being vulnerable. How to belong without risking exposure. That's not weakness. That's adaptation. But adaptation has a cost. It keeps you safe, but it keeps you unseen. And once you recognize that, something changes. Not all at once. Quietly. You begin to notice when you're holding back. When you're editing yourself mid-thought. When you're present in form but not in feeling. You don't force yourself to open. You simply notice where you're closing. That awareness creates space. Connection doesn't return through effort. It returns through permission. Permission to let someone see you without managing the outcome. Permission to stay with your own feelings long enough to recognize them as valid. Permission to take emotional risks without guaranteeing safety first. You don't suddenly feel surrounded by people. You feel inhabited. The loneliness loosens not because others change, but because you stop disappearing in the moments that matter. You stay present. You let yourself be affected. And slowly, connection stops feeling like something that happens around you. It becomes something that moves through you. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just real. And for the first time in a long while, the space inside you doesn't feel empty. It feels open.